Welcome back to the next segment, and I want to thank everybody for listening and hanging in there with me so far. I know these segments are kind of long. I wanted to do another interview and have it put on this episode, but I felt it would take up too much time, and I'm trying to keep your attention. So that's about as honest as I can be with that. I want to switch gears and talk about addiction. I had 7 years clean in the program of Narcotics Anonymous. It was probably one of the best. It was a better experience than what I was going to prior, and it was a better experience than I had ever remember having. Now I know this may seem a little hypocritical of me because I smoke weed. I talk about smoking weed. The fact remains that I did overcome addictions to other substances by using cannabis. My last run was on meth, and that was a huge monkey on my back. I did almost anything that I could to, and that's with any substance I've ingested. I was a heroin addict at one time. Addiction isn't just a physical thing. People just don't get hooked physically; they also get hooked mentally. The disease of addiction in itself is a spiritual, mental, and physical disease. If you don't believe me that it's a disease, ask a doctor and they'll school you on some shit. But let's talk about addiction, the word addict. And there are words that have negative connotations attached to them, and for good reason. Practicing addicts like to steal. Well, they don't like to, they just have to. They lie, they steal, and do unspeakable things to get that, just that one more. People generally count addicts out as a lost cause. I think your average human being's not mentally equipped with, to deal with that type of person. People behave in ways that they show us that fear drives them. Fear of the unknown can have you have shitty behaviors towards your fellow man. So let me yours for a few more minutes, and that I'm able to be an instrument of understanding. Addiction doesn't discriminate, at least not in my dealings with other addicts. I've used hard drugs with people who put on a suit and a tie to run a business meeting for shareholders the next day. I've shared dope with white, black, Asian, Hispanic, and homeless people. I've purchased pills from a 60-year-old woman who used those profits to buy crack. I turned down a 20-year-old woman who attempted to make me her first trick so she could stop being dope sick. Mothers, fathers, uncles, brothers, sisters, cousins, all of people that I've known for years have been affected by this. And you can sit there in judgment almost long enough to create a sense of denial of what the problem actually is. It's an emotion. It's environmental, if anything else. In the 1970s, a study by Dr. Bruce Alexander, who's a psychologist, concluded that when you put rats in a cage by themselves and leave them alone with 2 water bottles that contain 1 water and 2 narcotics in the other, the rat chose the drugs every time, ultimately until it died. The second group of rats were given the same options to drink. Only they were in a rat park, if you can imagine that. The park quickly turned into a community. The rats had no restrictions or barriers. They were free to roam around, eat, sleep, play, have sex, etc. They chose the plain water every time. The bottles of narcotics remained untouched. A social community overcame the power of the disease of addiction. And that's hope. Don't forget, after the virus days are behind us, that people are going to still try heroin for the first time. Unless facing the problem becomes a community effort. Nothing drastic. Just basic kindness, tolerance, love, understanding through education. Addicts can recover. I have personally met people with 30 to 40 years clean. And a 12-step program made that happen. Like I said, a 12-step program may not be for everybody. You might have to find other means and ways to handle the situation. If one doesn't work, please try another one. You don't want to... Let me explain to you how desperate this gets for most addicts. We all have a common prayer when we do decide to pray, and it's, "Dear God, please don't let me wake up tomorrow. Please just let me have an OD, or let me fall asleep and not wake up. Just please, I can't do this anymore. Please help me. Just end it now." And it's that dramatic. It's a bleak existence. The community sees a struggle, sees somebody struggling, then it should be the community's attitude towards the afflicted that could cause a positive outcome. The individual wouldn't feel so shunned or alone, and with some firm but practical boundaries on that person, I believe they can be restored to the community as a whole again, demonstrating a secure homeostasis. I mean, that's just using my own logic. That's what we need. We need more love, more patience, more tolerance, and more acceptance. I believe they will be the keys to overcoming the opioid crisis. I don't think the coronavirus did that good of a job. People are still able to get drugs. But definitely tolerance towards your fellow human being. That's going to be all for this show. I appreciate everyone listening. Guests coming up are a hip-hop artist called My Man Shafe. We then have a gentleman named Mark, who's an artist, a local one for Phoenix. He's a huge movie buff. So we may have some others here fairly shortly. I just haven't really booked anybody solid. So in the meantime, thank you for enjoying the show. Questions, comments, things you want to say to my last guest, things you want to say to me, Autobot0311 at protonmail.com. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day.